Okay, well, welcome.
Hi.
And we already have a good group in
Yay.
the room. That's awesome.
Great.
So before we get started, if you guys want to at any point comment in the chat box any questions that you have, if you just want to let us know where you're coming from, what your background is, how you heard about this. This is completely informal. It's live. It's unedited. You can go in any direction you guys want. But I'm so excited tonight to have Megan Broadhead on here. I met her through the wall, so I'm really glad to kind of connected us because we were going to do a talk together. And we become friends since then. Megan Broadhead is a licensed counselor, and she's the founder of the Brookhaven Center that you had been in 2015. Is that right?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
2015.
And then before then, you had engaged for premarital counseling,
Yeah.
right?
Yep. I was in private practice before and had started engaged while I was doing my private practice, and then kind of always envisioned having a group or a community of therapists. And so that got started. And so we're in Brookhaven, and there's 6 of us right now, and still seeing clients, teletherapy, this kind of thing. So
aren't you so thankful for technology with
so
everything going
thankful. Yeah, so thankful.
One of the things I love about Megan and her whole practice is they take a really holistic approach. And Megan is familiar with functional medicine on a personal level and on a professional level, which you guys know that's what we really do at That Wellness. So it's the perfect combination. We're all kind of putting in some different tidbits of fertility and how to support it maybe before you're pregnant, when you first find out you're pregnant, if you're struggling with infertility. And then Megan's going to talk a lot about like the psychological well-being of the journey and some different tips that we think really can relate to COVID-19 and being quarantined because our mindset's so important right now. And I was telling Megan, I was like, so much has changed since we decided on this topic.
Yeah, back in like January. It feels like a lifetime ago.
I know.
But you're pregnant.
Yes. So when we decided on this topic, I wasn't pregnant. COVID-19 wasn't existing. So we're going to kind of like put in both of those things and just kind of do it freestyle. But I want to first kind of hear about what population do you mainly see at your practice and what got you kind of into becoming kind of a fertility specialist when it comes to mental health?
Yeah. So where to start with that? So essentially, let's see, we see all 6 of us see people of all backgrounds, kids, adolescents, adults, couples, groups, families, pretty much everything. And so, but for me, myself, the client who I'm seeing on a daily basis is the person who really wants to go deeper within themselves, get a deeper understanding of who they are in relation to others and to something bigger. They're wanting connection with themselves. They're really wanting to see themselves in a new way and to achieve overall health. So I see that as mental, physical, spiritual. And so we touch on all of those. And I refer a lot of people to you, Kristin, just for that physical piece. And so that's really what I work mostly with men and women who want to live more fully, deeply, freely, want to be freed of anxiety, depression, all of that. So I know that's sort of broad, but that's the best way I know how to explain it. And then the fertility piece, I mean, really, truly that came from my own experience. So I think the way that I am as a therapist is really, it is personal. It is like this interpersonal exchange, and there's that humanness there. And so truly my experience has informed how this has even become a specialty, one that I never wanted, and I think anyone who has been through it would say that, but I feel so grateful to sit with women and men, see individuals and couples and walk alongside this process with them. And so it's really come out of my own experience, which I can also talk about too.
Yes. Well, how long is each one of your sessions? Are they like an hour session?
Yeah. So usually it's about 50 minutes. The therapy hour is 50 minutes. I usually tend to go more toward an hour. Okay. And I usually meet with my clients on bi-weekly basis. So unless they really need support every week, but usually people are on kind of a every other week or every 3 weeks kind of basis. So
it's just so nice to know that support, because so many people struggle with mental health and people feel like they have no options, maybe besides medication or just toughing it out. And I think we're really starting to put more awareness on the fact that like having a counselor or a therapist is great, and talking about how you're feeling is important, and coping mechanisms. Because I mean, I don't know this statistic off the top of my head, but I know anxiety and depression is one of the major mental health issues that we have in America.
Yep.
So
we talk about it as like the common cold of mental health. You know, it's like it totally is, and that's why I'm so grateful to be on here and talking to you, because it's clear that we're starting to value it more, and it's getting, and mental health is getting more of a voice.
And I think we're kind of being forced to when something like COVID-19 happens. Like, you know, we have more time to sit with who we are and how we feel. And life has really slowed down. And it's been interesting to kind of see some of the statistics of how, you know, alcohol use is going up. You know, I know depression and anxiety is going up. So
Totally.
Time.
Yeah. I think we always talk about kind of one of the biggest ways that we avoid is through busyness. And so, you know, so much of that has been taken away. And so I think you're right. Like people are really having, and I know that, and just sitting with my clients, stuff is just being magnified in a huge way, because we're sitting with ourselves, and so much of what we used to cope before has been removed, you know?
Yeah.
Which is a good thing, you know, but we can talk more about it and how to be in that. But yeah, I think it's a good thing too.
But it's tough. So we'll circle back.
So hard.
19, some of the tips and tricks that Megan can share with us. But I wanted to first kind of talk about, so we're talking about embracing fertility tonight, and we're not only talking about infertility or miscarriages. We're going to also be talking about just fertility health in general. But one of the big things I wanted to talk about is some people don't really know what infertility is. So if you're under the age of 35, infertility is when you have tried to get pregnant for a year without success. If you're over the age of 35, it's really within 6 months, so they're a little bit more aggressive. And there's primary infertility if you've never had a child before and you struggle to get pregnant, and secondary where maybe you have had one child and struggle to get pregnant again. And one thing just before we get into Megan's personal story is, according to the CDC, there's 10% of women, or 6.1 million women, struggle with infertility or staying pregnant. So when you think about that, 6.1 million women, that's a large, 10% of society is huge. So it's not only the female, like what's going on with the female hormones or anatomy, and like, there's also reasons for male health that can impact fertility, or a combination of males and females together that can impact it. But I just want to kind of go over those before we hear your personal story and kind of what got you into this. So let's hear your story, Megan.
Yeah. So another thing that was really helpful for me to kind of understand, actually, even when I was just reading through some things on the stats sort of side of things, is that it was a crazy number, like only 3% of women partners who were going through infertility were going to have to go the route of IVF or some kind of advanced reproductive technology. And so that was crazy to me. And so I'll talk more about that, because that is the route that I had to go. But it just sort of put into perspective, when you're on this journey of trying to grow your family, it just becomes this normal thing, you know? And so to even hear, there's so much comfort in knowing I'm not the only one, you know, and the statistics show that. But then also there's this strange comfort in knowing, like, oh, it is sort of wild that we got to this place. It is like less than 3% is, it's pretty wild. So anyway, so back to the beginning there. So my husband and I have been married. We're going on 12 years now, and we were that young couple, right? We met in college and got graduated, got married, moved to Atlanta, so I could go to grad school, and just started our life together. And so naturally, we wanted to wait a while to start to try to grow our family more. And so we waited and we went to school. We started our careers, had career changes and all of that stuff. And so then finally, probably about 6 or 7 years in, we decided we were ready. And I can remember thinking like, this will be easy. At that point, we were 28, 29. So we were still pretty young and under that 35 kind of age mark. And so we, started trying the natural way, timed intercourse, testing ovulation, the temperature, all of that, supplements. I don't know if you can hear that dinging. I'm really sorry, but I don't know how to make it stop my messages. So anyways, we were going down that route, and I remember seeing a few OBGYNs and expressing some concern. I've always had painful periods, but just sort of, again, thought it was normal. When you're in it, you just sort of start to normalize everything. And if someone doesn't come out and say, hey, there's something there, you don't always know to look at it. So I was sort of just following my intuitive sense throughout all of it. And less than a year, some sort of that like go-getter, we got to keep moving ahead kind of person, I decided to seek out a reproductive endocrinologist here in Atlanta. And so got that appointment, and it was just sort of like, you guys are young, you're healthy, this is going to be easy. We'll try some medication and some IUI. So intrauterine insemination. So I could kind of give you the real quick version of it, but we ended up doing 6 medicated IUIs, which never resulted in the pregnancy. And in the course of a few years, we did that. I had 2 laparoscopies, surgery to clear endometriosis, actually to find it. That's how they found it and diagnosed it, which I learned is common, that you don't find that kind of thing until something like infertility. And so I had that. We have just tons of medications and poking and prodding and procedures. There was a summer I was on this medication called Lupron, where it like mimicked menopause to try to put my body in a state of healing that endo. I mean, it was just wild. And so we eventually moved on to IVF. And so when all said and done with that, I've done, 2 egg retrievals, 3 frozen embryo transfers, 1 transfer where I didn't get pregnant at all, and then 2 where I did, but unfortunately had miscarriages. And I've experienced miscarriage 3 times now. And so it's like sort of the facts of my experience. And infused in that, I also was working with a naturopathic practitioner, an acupuncturist who specialized in fertility, which was amazing for me. There was obviously that spiritual mental component, which was so important. In all of this, sort of started a meditation practice and a real spiritual practice that was mine. Had the support from a great therapist, started a yoga practice, sort of was trying to learn how to take care of myself in all of this. But that's sort of everything. And then in 2018, we had 2 frozen embryos left. And a few months prior, I had actually gotten a second opinion from a doctor in Chicago, Dr. Joanne Kwok Kim. She's a reproductive immunologist. And this was sort of a last-ditch effort. My RE here in Atlanta told me that if I would recommend transferring these 2 embryos at the same time, and if you don't get pregnant, then I think our next step is surrogacy. And so that was a hard pill to swallow, and so I wanted to do everything I could to up my chances of pregnancy. And so I saw this doctor in Chicago, and she put me on a regimen of steroids and medications, which I'm sure I know you can speak to more, but to support my immune system and to reduce inflammation and these inflammatory markers. And so we were set to transfer our last 2 embryos in February of 2018, when that doctor decided that she wanted me to be on the steroids for longer. So we decided to postpone it for a month, which at the time was like just devastating. Anyone going through this, and at this point it had been years, and you just want your baby now, yesterday, and so a month feels like an eternity. So remember just feeling so down about that. And but we agreed to wait. And so we're set to transfer in March 2018. Well, in February 2018, the month we were supposed to transfer, I found out that I was pregnant just naturally. And that had never happened before. I'd never been pregnant naturally before. And so it was wild. Like overnight, I just became the person who was so hard for me to hear their story. You hear these things like, oh, she let go and then she got pregnant, or, oh, she just stopped thinking about it, or she moved on in her mind. And those things, I couldn't get away from it. Like that was now me, and I was so grateful. And so, yeah, I can talk about pregnancy and everything too, but it was wild to get pregnant after years and years of infertility. And I think there's so many things that played into that, and we can talk about that too. But I think for sure there's that spiritual and mental component. I know that was a part in it for me and for my husband. And then just the medical piece and addressing the immune piece and all of that. And so I've learned through all of that to kind of integrate all these pieces of me, and that I bring that into my work and I bring that into my life. And now I have this living, breathing 18-month-old, just symbol of hope, and so I bring that too. But
he is adorable.
Yeah, he is. He's
so cute.
He's really, it's really great. And having a child after infertility, I think, of course, we all appreciate and love our children. There's just this sense of just gratitude, I'm just so aware of. But I know my story has this happy ending. I know that so many are waiting for theirs and are probably listening and waiting for theirs. And I know that, and I see that, and I've been there, and I know what it's like to be on, on the floor of the bedroom where you're hoping to have a baby and you're just not able to move, I know the devastation in that too. And I know now I have this living, breathing kind of symbol of hope. And I didn't before too. So there's ways I had to sort of find that hope before he was here, Yeah, so that's my story to Micah. His name is Micah. And it totally just infuses the work that I do and all of that. And the men and women I sit with, most of them all know my story and have maybe were in it with me in some way, shape, or form. So,
well, I think one of the things I even want to go back to is at the very beginning, that you guys were young, getting married, you kind of planned out your life.
Yeah.
You were a go-getter, like you had your timeline, okay, now we need to have a child. And with for people that are in that position that are, I don't want to say but more organized and very, they have a plan and a purpose, and it doesn't go according to plan. Any tips for those people in those moments?
Yes. So I think that type A kind of personality, which I don't know what I am now, because I feel so removed from that because of fertility, the infertility experience. I think it's harder for that personality. And I have so much compassion for because we want to create an illusion of control. We want safety. We want things to go a certain way. And that was part of my story with infertility. Was up until that point, anything I had really worked for, and I know this is such a place of privilege too, but it's like if I worked hard enough, then I could get it, or if I did this, then I could get it, and it was just, that wasn't happening, and that's not how it works. And truly, it was this realization that that's not actually how the world works, you know? And so tips, I think we can kind of get more into that too, but it's like, how do we let go? How do we trust in the mystery? I talk about this a lot with people, like embracing the mystery. I fought it for so long because I thought that my way was the best way. And one of a spiritual teacher that I had told me, she just looked at me and said, this was years in, and I just experienced my second loss. And she said, Megan, I never could have manifested or orchestrated. I never could have orchestrated the life that I have now. Like, I never could have done that, imagined or dreamt of that. And there was something in me that just freed up in that moment to let go a little bit more. I think I was learning to let go. And in that moment, it was like, okay, can I trust that there is something for me, and it may not look the way that I want it to look, but that it might even be better, you know? And that's so hard when you're in it. But sort of stepping outside of that box of how I thought it should be.
So for you was like journaling or talking about it, or did you get your own therapist?
Yeah. Yep. I had my own, all of the above. I had my own therapist. I started a meditation practice during this time and joined a really open spirituality group where we were all committed to meditating 20 minutes a day. And that's how we started our practice. And we still meet now. This is years ago. We still meet. And so I had that piece of things, journaling for sure, through all of it. And really my community, like talking, it was so interesting because there can be such loneliness in infertility. And I felt that for sure, you know, the people that you could relate to before, oftentimes you can't anymore. And those people are getting pregnant and starting families, and the disconnect can feel so real. But the beautiful thing that also happened was the more that I felt open to talk about what I was experiencing, I drew people to me who were also experiencing some form of infertility. And so I felt so, you know, fortunate to have that community. I made really close friends and had such good support. And I think I know that part of that was my intention and seeking that out and being open in a way that felt safe, you know, not sort of like broadcasting it everywhere before I was ready to, but in a way that felt safe. And so for sure, I couldn't have done it. And like acupuncture, like bringing these healers into my life, regardless of whatever the outcome would be, you know, for a while there, for me, it was like, I'm going to do acupuncture so that it will help me to get pregnant. And you know, or I'm going to do therapy so I can clear all this stuff out and then make room for a new way of being and be open, truly open, you know. But there was always the control was still there. You know, it's like, oh, if I do this, then this will happen. And so for me, it was also that. It was like letting go of that, letting self-care and that soul care actually be that in and of itself, not for this end that I wanted.
So you changed the perspective to really be like, how can I become my best version of me?
Yeah.
So like with meditating that you do 20 minutes a day, I'm just curious, like
I don't always do that now. Now
I have a lot.
I know.
I think it's amazing. When you were doing it, were you somebody that always did it at the same time? Did you have the same space in the house to do it?
Yeah. So that's recommended if you can, to carve out a space. And I actually always used this chair. And yeah, to carve out a space, a room, if you have it, with a door so that you don't get interrupted. But that's just not always feasible for people. A space that's quiet. A space that has things that you like in it, you know, meaningful items, things like that. And it's interesting what happens. I didn't understand the significance of space, but what happens is as you create the rhythm in your life, you actually get drawn to that space. You know, there'd be times, and actually my space was in what is now the nursery. So that was also sort of a really sweet thing for me. But I would find myself getting drawn to the space just to sit, you know, and even when I didn't want to, and be like, well, I'm feeling pulled there. And so I just kind of think that space creates energy too. And just starting, you know, like 20 minutes it's a lot. And we didn't do guided. We just sort of sat with ourselves. And so I just think anywhere you can start to be and to see yourself, and a lot of stuff's going to come up that's not nice, you know, like the busyness in your own mind and all of that, and just sitting with yourself and being with yourself through it. I think that practice was so helpful.
So would you focus on your breathing or more on your thoughts, or a combination of both?
Yeah, you focus on your breath. Sometimes people like to do a certain pattern of breath, like, you know, there's the 4 in, hold, 4 out, and then you can make your way up, 5 in, 6 in, 7 in, you know, all the way up to like 20. Sometimes some people can do in 20, hold 20, out 20.
Wow.
So you can do that. A lot of what I did was just sort of sit and be an observer of whatever came. So a lot of times what comes to you is you know, it's like when you sit with yourself, you show up. And so I would find a lot of judgment. I would find that I wanted to sit and I wanted to have this huge, great experience, this otherworldly experience, which I had a few times, but not every time is like that. You know, sometimes you're counting down the minutes. So, but I saw myself in that. It's like, oh, that's how I am. Like that. I want those moments. I don't want the moments that feel hard and like I'm counting down, I'm watching the clock, and I'm, you know, so it's this practice of just being an observer of yourself and letting it go. So you have a thought, I wonder what I'm going to make for dinner. Oh, there was an interesting thought. I'm going to let it go now. And it's just that letting go that actually you can see why that would be so helpful in life in general, and especially in the fertility journey, you know, like this letting go.
And I just think about too how many things and thoughts that we were repressing that we never bring to our consciousness and let go. And so being present to like know kind of what's stirring inside of you that you haven't taken time to pay attention to. Because really you have to mindfully let go, or it's still going to be present.
Yeah, you would probably know more about this, but I read some research that found that the physiological effects of an emotion, do you know this, really only last 90 seconds in the body. Like that's the lifespan of an emotion and the effects of it in the body. And everything beyond that is our sort of ruminating on that feeling or taking it and running with it. You know, that was huge for me to learn.
That if you can actually let go, you're not going to have that negative chronic stress reaction from it. And then the other thing just with your story that I wanted to touch on was fear, just because I know that I work with, and I would imagine this is me personally, after you've had 3 miscarriages, when you are pregnant, how do you prevent that fear from just consuming you?
Yeah. So I would say, again, the being with it and being where you are, recognizing it, not trying to ignore it, or because it's real. And in the case of miscarriage, it has been something you've experienced. It's a lived experience that's held in your body and your spirit and your mind and your memory, you know, all of that. And so it's real. And so to deny it doesn't really help us, as we were saying. So to acknowledge it and to then also insert something else in there, like that happened and it may not happen again, you know, like that hopeful message. And it's hard. There's something called anticipatory grief. And I think that is something that anyone who's struggled with fertility or anyone who's experienced a miscarriage knows and feels. And so it's the feelings when we get when we think about how the future is uncertain, when someone we love gets a dire diagnosis, when we find out we're pregnant and we've had a miscarriage before, it's this anticipating a scenario that we don't know is going to happen, but could happen. And it's the grief that we feel in it. And so I think that's something that people who have experienced, I know myself, miscarriage experience. And so when that happens, when you're in this space of grief, anticipatory grief, or fear, it is all fear. That's fear. it's like inserting in whatever tiny tidbit of hope you can find, inserting it in, even if you don't believe it. You know, even if 99% of you doesn't believe it, if there's 1%, inserting that in and holding it alongside the fear. That's a super important skill that I talk to all my clients about and talk to myself about. You know, Liz Gilbert actually has this amazing analogy when it comes to fear. And she says that she I can't remember the book. Big Magic is the book that she writes about it. And she says, fear is allowed and is going to be present in my life. And she uses this analogy of driving along in a car, and fear is in the back seat, doesn't get to be in the front seat, doesn't get to pick the radio station, doesn't get to pick which direction we go, doesn't get to really have a say in anything, but fear can be back there. And I think I love that. And I love that for fertility, for the fear of miscarriage, for all of it, because it's like, it's there. Let's acknowledge that it's there, and it can be there, but it doesn't get to call the shots. And there's something really empowering about that for women who are in this, and men too. You know, there's really something empowering about saying, like, I don't need to make decisions out of fear if I don't want to.
I love that.
Yeah, I love that picture of that. Yeah.
You work with females and males, like when they're going through infertility.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just curious, like, what is the difference in response? Like, I mean, I know this is so general and it varies, but
yeah, the biggest thing I hear, and there can be such a disconnect. There's a reason that you hear about couples splitting up during infertility. There's real opportunity for disconnect. And so what I try to do in my work with couples particularly is like find connection. But some of the biggest differences is women, we feel like, you don't understand. You're never going to understand. This is my body. This is happening to my body. This isn't happening to you. You get to just sort of be and live your life. And you can kind of even hear it. There is sometimes a resentment that can build in that kind of talking. And it's also true. Like, it is really true. Like, men can't get it, like, biologically, physically, what happens to us when we're pregnant, what happens to us when we're trying to get pregnant, the effects on the body, spirit, all of that, after we have the baby, like, through all of this, it's not their experience. And so that's the biggest thing that I hear. And that's one of the biggest things that can create such a divide. And so if we can move beyond that, like, yeah, you guys are going to have different experiences. And for men, there's a sense, a lot of times, I know this is true of my husband, there's a sense of helplessness a lot of the time, because there's nothing other than being present that they can really do. You know, they can be present at the appointments, they can listen, they can have presence in that way, but they can't keep a pregnancy viable. You know, they can't keep even us safe, you know, so there's this sense of helplessness. And a lot of times what I find is that the men have more optimism. And I don't know, I've sort of toyed around with, like, the idea that as women, we also have this biological clock, which is sort of running and we're super aware of all the time. But the men I've sat with, and this is also true in my relationship, there was a lot more optimism, a lot more like, it's going to happen, kind of like that cheerleader effect. It's going to happen. And up until it happened for us, my husband still thought we could get pregnant naturally, you know, like I was long gone from that. And so there's a sense of optimism, I think, which can sometimes be also avoidance, right? Like, and for women, there's less of an opportunity to avoid. I mean, we do, and we can in all sorts of ways. But at the end of the day, like, every month there's this reminder, right? There are so many reminders for us. It's harder for us to sort of step away. So those are the big differences. And so again, it's like, when I hear these and work with these, with couples, and, you know, and even in my own experience, it was like, we had to learn how to hear each other's experience. And I talk about this a lot. That's like, we can be on this parallel journey. We're going in the same direction and we're having our own experiences. And sometimes we come in and we're connected, really connected, and we all love those feelings so much. And sometimes we're out here and we're just doing our own thing and it's different, but we're sort of heading in the same way. And to help people be okay with that. And that was huge for me too, is like, it can be okay that Jono, my husband, has this different experience of things. And it doesn't mean that he doesn't see me or he can't be present with me. And so I sort of sit with people to help them understand what they need emotionally, and how to ask for it from their partner, and how to just honor the differences in experiences. It doesn't have to mean anything. It's just different, you know? And so hopefully that's a long answer to your question, but it's hard. It's hard for couples. So hard.
And I think too, it's kind of with the males, with the optimism component of what we were talking about earlier, that if I work really hard, it will happen.
Yeah.
And they feel the same way. Like, I got to keep staying optimistic for my wife.
Yes. Yeah.
Going through all of this, I got to stay strong. If I keep staying strong, maybe we can just keep pushing, away.
A lot of that. And so for men too, it's like when I work with men, it's like getting to that space of what are you feeling, and making space for that too, because a lot of times they feel like there's not space for that,
And they may not want to share how they really feel. So then emotions as pressure too.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to kind of share, because with me now being pregnant, it's a whole new world. And it's very interesting. And I wonder if part of it's because I know so much and I'm kind of blown away by the whole system. And I think conventional medicine is amazing. And so I want to start by saying that, like, I truly value it, like what they were able to do with IVF and IUIs and the technology to do laparoscopic procedures. Like, there's so many advances and so much amazing things. But it was very interesting for me being on the flip side with how much I know. I found out I was pregnant. I called my OB and they're like, okay, well, we'll see you in about 6 to 8 weeks, because we want to make sure when we do that first ultrasound that we're able to see the heartbeat and that it's a viable pregnancy. Because we know 80% of people miscarry in that first 12-week window.
Yeah.
And I just remember being like, well, don't they want to check my thyroid and my progesterone and my nutrients and make some prenatal and all these things we know in functional medicine? And I was just like so blown away, because your chance of miscarrying is 5 times more if your TSH is above 2.5. Nobody's checked my thyroid there. Yeah. Nobody, even when they did blood work, I was like, oh, well, how was my thyroid? How was my progesterone? And they did a CBC and some genetic testing. And it just kind of opened my eyes to how much as a culture we need functional medicine.
Yeah.
Because I was like, man, if we could really know where our nutrients are at, maybe before we get pregnant or try to get pregnant, if we could really know where our thyroid is, if we can take a deeper dive in how we're breaking down our estrogens and seeing signs of endometriosis or fibrocystic breast and, estrogen dominance. What if we could intervene there before you've been on this infertility journey for 2 years?
Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
And not just referring to you, but just in general, I was just like, what if I miscarried in that time and I never seen anybody, I never talked to anybody? Then I think I wasn't taking a prenatal because nobody told me to.
Yeah.
And then the flip side of it is you also feel, my experience, I felt horrible in my first trimester. And so nobody is telling me like, okay, here's some tips of what you can do with morning sickness. Here's what you can do when you're having food aversion. And, I know for me, if I'm taking the high dose B6, I'm doing my blood work, I'm doing the tea and the ginger chews, and I know it's prenatal, they're methylated and active and have good omega. I feel very fortunate for my knowledge.
Yeah.
But I just felt heartbroken for the people that don't know.
Right.
So I just
that's a huge disconnect too. Even in the world of infertility. I was telling you before we started, an advantage of being, if there is, once you do get pregnant, at least up until usually it's 9 or 10 weeks, you are monitored by, if you're at a specialist, you're heavily monitored. So I always knew I always knew, you know, like the day, the first day you possibly could know, or even before that, I usually would know when I was pregnant. And so then I would go in for blood work, and I would go in, they send you in at like 7 weeks for an ultrasound. But even in that, there's pieces that are missing. And that was a huge thing of just learning assertiveness, like learning to listen to your intuitive sense of something's not right, or something is right. And I don't need this, or that, you know, or whatever it is. And I think that's sort of what you're talking about too, is just being grateful for that knowledge. And also just that inner knowing of like, okay, I need more. Or in my case, I've been feeling a lot even lately, I need less, you know, I need a little less of like this protocol, maybe, but yeah. It is. I'm so thankful for the integrative approach, and thankful that I had the resources and the ability to kind of include that in everything.
I think it's just so key. And it's just, you know, certain things we know, like folate and neural tubes.
Yeah.
Nobody should folate at any point.
Yeah. I didn't learn that I had that MTHFR genetic mutation until it was about a year and a half in to trying. And so it was like, great. I could have at the very least been taking the right kind of methylated folate, you know, or it's just, yeah.
And who tested that for you? Was it the naturopath or was it?
It was my RE. Yeah. It
Okay.
was my RE. At some point they tested it. I don't remember if it was in the initial or not.
So for those of you guys listening, MTHFR, which Megan brings up, is one of the really common methylation SNPs that plays a role with how we use folic acid. So folic acid is synthetic. It's only found in vitamins or fortified food. Folate you can naturally find in dark leafy, green leafy vegetables, but methyl tetrahydrofolate is the active form that our body loves. And depending on if you have MTHFR mutation, you're not able to break down that folic acid to get it to methyl tetrahydrofolate. So you could be taking the wrong prenatal that your body can't recognize.
Yeah.
And that's a very important component that is important.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's just so much information. There's so much that you learn along the way. And this is also what my experience was, and is also my experience in the women I sit with, is there's a lot of frustration of like, why didn't I know that? Like, if I'd known that, I could have done this, or I could have done that, or maybe it would have been different. And there was just there's sort of a point where I had to accept that this was the process and this is how information was unfolding, and that all I could really do was choices about what I was going to do in the future. And it's so hard because we do go to that what if place, or if I had known this, could I have kept that pregnancy, you know, or if I had known. And it's just sort of, there's an acceptance of the process. And it's like, we don't know a lot of times until we know. I had to have surgery to find out that I had endometriosis, to confirm what I thought was already the truth, you know? And so it's like, okay, that's what it took. And there's this acceptance alongside the assertiveness and the ability to ask for what you want and what you feel like you need.
Well, I think part of it is there's not like a very good kind of prenatal panel that they do, because insurance dictates coverage. So I know from my patients, they won't cover certain tests until it's been a year of time and they get that diagnosis. And so if we can just be advocates and kind of just know what are some general health markers when it comes to our overall health and wellness as females, but also to our ability to be able to conceive or maintain a pregnancy. Because I always say our body should be optimal for pregnancy all the time.
Yeah.
Like you don't only want to have an optimal TSH when you're trying to get pregnant.
Right.
You want optimal TSH at all stages of your life so that you feel as good as possible.
Yeah. I wonder, could you talk about, and I'm happy to even just share that you and I've been working with you too, you know, I'm again thrown into this fertility journey. I don't know if you ever leave it truly, to try to have a second child. And so you and I are working together, and I would love it if you could talk about the low dose naproxen, if that feels like a good, because I was talking to a friend actually just last night, and I sent her the name and everything. She was like, Megan, I've been on this for 3 months and has had this incredible shift, lowering in her of her antibodies and her thyroid's in a normal range now, and has experienced all these amazing benefits. And so I want people to know about this. So can you talk about it?
Of course. So low-dose naltrexone is one of my favorite things on the market. I love low-dose naltrexone. So first, it's kind of complex because people go onto Google and they look up naltrexone, and you'll read about something completely different than what we're referring to. So naltrexone is what they use for people when they're coming off pain medicine or drug addiction. And those can be at doses of 50, 75, 100 milligrams. And you can get them in a retail pharmacy. Low-dose naltrexone, I kind of think of it as homeopathy because it's a very small percentage of that medicine used for a totally different reason. And one of the big things that we know in America is that most of us are walking around with some degree of chronic inflammation. And chronic inflammation can activate our immune system as well. And this is really important to think of COVID-19 and just our immune system as a whole is how can we reduce inflammation? And so one of the thoughts is some people that have miscarriages or struggle getting pregnant, their bodies use it as foreign and their bodies try to attack it, and it's part of that autoimmune process. And 75% of women, 75% of people with autoimmune disease are women. So we have more autoimmune. Wow. So low-dose naltrexone, you take it at night, and at about 3 a.m., your endorphins are produced. And low-dose naltrexone binds to those opioid receptor sites and helps lower inflammation. So when we wake up with autoimmune disease or inflammation, it's the highest because of those opioid responses at 3 a.m. And so our goal is to bind with that and to lower the inflammation.
Cool.
Great from photos, PCOS, endometriosis if it's an inflammatory condition, rheumatoid.
Which we knew mine was because of all the testing I had from that reproductive immunologist. And
the fact that steroids helped.
Yes. So helped me
low-dose
probably conceive naturally.
Is our kind of natural steroid and functional medicine.
Cool.
And Kate asked if you have any book recs. She loves taking fertility.
Yes, that's a good one. I actually brought them. Hang on, let's see. Let's brought them upstairs. So my favorite, and you have to sort of, my favorite is It Starts with the Egg. My favorite for like a very practical approach. However, this is a disclaimer, it can be super overwhelming. So what I always tell people is do what you can and I just acknowledge what you can't do, and so it's step by step. So for me, it was like, okay, I can replace a lot of our cleaning products at home to be natural. I can then start to look at my skincare and shampoo and conditioner and all that stuff. And so it was just like these small, get rid of all the plastic in the kitchen, So it can feel overwhelming if you take it in all at once, but just do what you can. And so I love that one. I really liked as just a story of infertility, this Inconceivable, Julia Indikova. I'm not sure I'm saying that right, but just a really good story that also, there's also tons of ideas and tips and things. And it's a story with a good ending too. So there's that. Now, here's my other disclaimer. If you want more of like a woo-woo spiritual approach, which I love, my favorite was Spirit Babies, how to communicate with the child you're meant to have. And it just sort of opened me to just the vastness of why a soul comes when they do, and why they, so that was a huge one. And then similarly, there's another one that's called Cosmic Cradle, Spiritual Dimensions of Life Before Birth, cool stories. And again, kind of more in that like woo-woo spiritual space. If that's kind of what you want, it is what I wanted. So those are my favorites. Spirit Babies.
I have never read a single one of those, so I'm like making.
You haven't?
No.
You would like It Starts with the Egg. I think it's probably a lot of what you already teach too and do yourself. But just so much information. It's a lot of information, that one, but it's helpful. Because we want to, just like you were saying, we want to know what we can do. We want to feel like there's something we can do. And there oftentimes there is, for sure. We can feel empowered. And so I think, like with any resource, if it starts to make you feel disempowered, put it down,
Yes.
Yeah.
I think that's good advice. And then do any of you guys listening have any questions before we kind of move to some COVID-19 mindset to finish up the night?
Mm-hmm.
Feel free to put your comments in the box, but we'll go ahead and start, and then we'll just stop and answer your questions. But then what advice do you have for everybody?
Oh gosh.
New normal.
Yeah. So, okay. So I would say, be gentle with yourself. It's like, I know people who are super sensitive, like myself, we sort of experience and feel the pain in the world. And so, don't underestimate how that is affecting you. And so there's the gentleness and compassion with yourself right now, and whatever your circumstances are, is huge. And so there's this sort of sense that we should be productive and getting things done and doing stuff around the house we've been meaning to do for years. And I don't know about anyone else, but I found that I don't have the energy for that right now. And so it's just sort of honoring that and knowing. And if you do have a day where you're full of energy and you want to go run at a safe distance from people, or you want to then do that. But it's just an intuitive listening to yourself and that gentleness in each moment, and just being aware of any pressure, being aware of fear is huge. And again, I think, so many of the coping skills for fertility are so applicable now. It's like, know when you're making decisions out of fear, and just know it. And if you decide to still do it out of fear, then you do, but really being aware of it. Giving back is always helpful. Supporting, is always helpful for our mental health. It takes us outside of ourselves, creates compassion, empathy. And so any way that we can do that now, if we're in a position to do that, I think is so important.
I think it's too. We're trying to support as many local businesses as we can right now.
Yeah. Yep. Definitely.
And then Catherine asked a question. So she said, if you already know that you have endometriosis, you've had the laparoscopic procedure already, and you want to start trying, where do you start?
Yeah, that's you.
Yeah. So Catherine, one of the big things that we start with endometriosis is one of our favorite tests is the gut test, to see how your body breaks down estrogen, because we really want to help. A lot of endometriosis is estrogen dominant. We want to help you break down the estrogen to help any further thickening from occurring. Look at your progesterone, because that is your pregnancy hormone, and you really need enough of it. And if you're estrogen dominant, you may not. And then you really want to look at your nutrients as a whole outside of estrogen and progesterone balance. So you want to see, how is your folate, how is your B12, how is your methylation cycle working, how are you detoxing and processing. So it is a little bit complex, but the biggest thing is making sure your estrogen and progesterone are in balance, because that's a big common thing with endometriosis.
Yeah. And there's also, you may know this, there's a, I think it might be 6 months after the laparoscopy where you're the most fertile. Is it 6 months? Yeah. So I always kept that in mind too. And I will say my pregnancy with Micah came in February, and I'd had my second laparoscopy in December. So there's just so many pieces that connected to him, but I think it's great to, within that 6 months, be trying probably.
And I think too, maybe not waiting until you're ready to be pregnant, but just kind of pressure free while you're making sure you're as healthy as possible and your hormones are balanced is really where I would start. I know it's very stressful, temperature checking and looking for LH surges and tracking cycles and reading too much information, and it can just be a lot.
Yeah. Yep. For sure. Yeah. And that's another piece of the couples process too, that I can often forget, just having, once you get sort of into that medical approach, it isn't so much about sex and timing and, in that kind of way. And so I love that. I love that if you can kind of have some of that lightness in the beginning, especially, and not so much pressure. That's great.
That's great. Anybody have any other questions before we wrap up tonight? We'll wait just another minute. I'm so glad you came on, and that
I know
it was great. A lot of good information, and thanks for sharing your personal story too.
Oh yeah, of course. I'm happy to share, and I'm just honored that I get to talk about this. It's an honor.
Catherine said Megan's awesome.
Thanks, Catherine. Looks like someone has a question. Emma says, so I looked up laparoscopy. Is it considered infertility treatment? And B, if you're in the process of trying all options, should you advocate for the procedure?
In my experience, a lot of times they'll do laparoscopic procedures with a number of symptoms. So if you're not having cycles, if you're having super painful cycles, any reason to think that something could be going on within the uterine lining, the fallopian tubes, and nothing is on the ultrasound, it's the next step to actually get in there and see what's going on. Yeah. In my opinion, there's a lot of things that should be looked at even before being like, I need a laparoscopic procedure. I don't know if you have anything different to add.
Yeah, I had countless ultrasounds and no one detected anything. So sometimes and countless tests and everything, but it is surgery, and so it took me a good week or so to get back to normal. And so it's hard on your body. And so I would say, if there's anything that you can do before that. But for me, I was glad I did it both times, really, especially the second time, obviously, but if it had a part and being able to get and stay pregnant, which for me, my lining was part of the problem, and that endometriosis was part of the problem. So, but I would say just check in with yourself, and ask about it and see about the answers you get and whether they sit with you in a way that feels good or whether you want to push back a little bit more.
And I think making sure that you've had a transvaginal ultrasound. They are able to see some things through that. It's not going to be as accurate as laparoscopic procedures, but it's a good starting point.
Yeah.
Megan, do you want to put in the chat box where people can find you?
Yeah, sure. I will do that right now. Yeah, and I'm happy to talk to anybody outside of this, do like a phone consult or something to see if you want to work with me. If you just want to talk about this kind of stuff, I know it can feel lonely. So I'll put my info there. But I'm so grateful to you, Kristin, for having me on and for talking about this too. There's so many of us who are so appreciative of people like you are having these conversations. So I just thank you.
Oh, absolutely. And thank you for being fun.
Yeah. Yep.
So if you want to put your information
yes. Let's see.
If they want to work with you, which I highly suggest.
All right. Okay. So there's my email and website. Yep.
I'll give everybody a minute to write that down or click on it to open it up. But thank you so much again, Megan, and we're all going to make it through quarantine stronger people.
Yes, we are. Just be gentle and compassionate with yourself and with others. Gentleness, ease.
The thing is, before this, I was getting up at 3:35 and working 18 hours on a new business, and getting so much more sleep and
and you need it.
Well, it's just so many things have changed. Like I've realized, it's not worth working 18 hours, and just really trying to be with the time that I have, and then resting and recovering, and the power of doing nothing. It's really everyone's becoming aware of something during this time, and so I love that you're
that that's what your teaching is, you know. And there's been plenty that have been making themselves known to me too, like just these teachings of, I think it's calling us all to be present in a way that we haven't been before with ourselves and with others.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, we're so thankful for you, Megan, and have a great rest of your
Thank you. You too.
And thanks everybody for tuning in.
Thanks.